Picture this. You walk into what looks like a regular barber shop in 1450, ready for a simple haircut and shave. The familiar smell of soap and sharp steel fills the air. But then you notice something odd. There's blood on the floor, surgical instruments gleaming on a wooden table, and the barber's just finished pulling someone's tooth while simultaneously treating what looks like a broken bone. Welcome to the world of the barber surgeon, where your morning trim might come with a side of amputation. You might think medieval medicine was all about leeches and prayer, but these guys were the Swiss Army knives of their time. They didn't just cut hair, they cut everything else too. From infected wounds to rotting teeth, from bloodletting to bone setting, barber surgeons were the one-stop medical shops of medieval Europe. And trust me, you haven't lived until you've heard the story of how a simple haircut appointment could turn into emergency surgery faster than you could say, just a little off the top. Before we dive into this bloody fascinating world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. I want to hear what surprised you most about medieval medicine in the comments below. Was it the tools they used, the procedures they performed, or maybe just how much these barber surgeons actually knew about healing? Drop your thoughts down there. The year is 1450, somewhere in northern Europe. Dawn breaks over cobblestone streets, and our barber surgeon is already awake, preparing for what promises to be another chaotic day. His shop sits right on the main market square, prime real estate for catching customers and patients alike. The wooden sign hanging outside shows the classic barber pole, but this isn't the red, white and blue spiral we know today. This one's got red and white stripes that actually mean something. Red for blood, white for bandages. It's like a medieval advertisement that says, "We cut hair and also maybe save your life." Inside the shop, everything has its place. Razors hang in perfect rows, their edges sharp enough to split a hair lengthwise. Wooden bowls for mixing soap sit next to clay jars filled with mysterious powders and ointments. But look closer, and you'll spot the surgical instruments. Bone saws, forceps, and those wicked-looking curved needles for stitching wounds. The apprentice, probably no older than 14, is already moving around the shop like he's been doing this his whole life, which, considering he started at age 7, he practically has. The morning rush begins before the sun fully clears the rooftops. First customers are always the merchants and craftsmen who need to look presentable for their daily business. The barber surgeon works with practiced efficiency, his hands moving the razor across faces with the same steady precision he'll use later for surgery. Each stroke removes not just whiskers, but also the accumulated grime and dead skin that comes from medieval living. Hot water steams in copper basins, a luxury that most people only experience during their monthly visit to the barber. But here's where things get interesting. About halfway through shaving a local baker, the door bursts open. A carter stumbles in, his face pale as parchment, cradling his left hand against his chest. Blood seeps through his fingers, and you can tell immediately that this isn't a simple cut. His finger hangs at an unnatural angle, crushed, probably by his own cartwheel, or maybe a stubborn ox that decided to step in the wrong place. The barber surgeon doesn't miss a beat. He finishes the baker's shave with 3 quick strokes, wipes his hands clean, and turns to examine the injured man. This is where the real magic happens, the seamless transition from grooming to surgery that made these practitioners so valuable to their communities. The apprentice springs into action too, already heating wine in a small pot and laying out clean linen strips. The examination is thorough but quick. Experienced hands probe the damaged finger, checking for broken bones and assessing the blood flow. Medieval barber surgeons might not have had X-rays or modern diagnostic tools, but they developed an incredible ability to understand injuries through touch alone. Years of treating everything from sword wounds to farming accidents gave them a kind of medical intuition that would impress modern doctors. The treatment begins with cleaning, not just a quick rinse, but a proper cleansing with heated wine. This wasn't some primitive superstition. These practitioners had figured out that alcohol helped prevent the nasty infections that killed more people than the original injuries. The wine burns as it hits the wound, and the carter grits his teeth so hard you can hear them grinding together. But he doesn't pull away. He knows this barber surgeon's reputation, and in a world where medical mistakes meant death, reputation was everything. Setting the finger requires a delicate balance of force and precision. Too gentle, and the bones won't align properly. Too rough, and you risk causing more damage than you're fixing. The barber surgeon works with the confidence of someone who's done this hundreds of times before. His hands position the finger just so, applying pressure until you hear that distinctive pop of bones sliding back into place. The carter's face goes from pale to green, but he manages to stay conscious, probably helped by the shot of strong ale the apprentice thoughtfully provided. The splinting process reveals just how sophisticated these medieval practitioners really were. They didn't just tie random sticks to broken bones and hope for the best. The wooden splint is carefully carved to fit the specific shape of the finger, padded with soft cloth to prevent pressure sores, and secured with linen strips that provide support without cutting off circulation. The apprentice assists with the precision of a modern surgical nurse, holding materials ready and anticipating his master's needs. Outside, word has spread that the barber surgeon is treating a serious injury. A small crowd gathers, not out of morbid curiosity, but because medical procedures were public events in medieval times. People needed to see that their local healer knew what he was doing. Their lives might depend on his skills someday. The audience watches in respectful silence as the final bandages are applied and the carter receives detailed instructions about keeping the wound clean and dry. But there's no time to rest. The morning rush continues, and already another customer waits. This time, someone with a dental emergency. Medieval teeth were basically ticking time bombs of pain and infection. Without modern dental care, even simple cavities could become life-threatening abscesses. The barber surgeon examines the swollen jaw and immediately knows what needs to happen. The tooth has to come out, and it has to come out now. The tooth extraction takes place right there in the market square, because some procedures require more space and better light than the cramped shop can provide. A wooden stool serves as the patient's chair, positioned so everyone can see the proceedings. This isn't just medical theatre, it's practical education. Every person watching is learning something they might need to know someday, either for themselves or their family members. The tools for tooth extraction look more like medieval torture devices than medical instruments. The forceps are massive iron things with handles long enough to provide serious leverage. But in the hands of an experienced barber surgeon, they become precision instruments capable of removing even the most stubborn molars without shattering them into painful fragments. The procedure itself is over in seconds, but those seconds require years of training to execute properly. One wrong twist, and the tooth breaks off at the root, leaving behind a source of infection that could kill the patient within weeks. The crowd holds its collective breath as the barber surgeon positions his tools, grips the infected tooth, and applies pressure in exactly the right direction. The tooth comes out clean, with a wet, sucking sound that makes half the crowd wince and the other half lean in closer. Blood fills the empty socket, but the barber surgeon is already ready with a piece of cloth soaked in wine and herbs. The patient spits crimson into a basin, probably tasting copper and relief in equal measure. The whole extraction took maybe 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds just saved someone from weeks of agony and possible death from infection. The crowd disperses with murmurs of approval, and our barber surgeon wipes his hands clean before heading back into the shop. But the day's medical adventures are far from over. A merchant waits inside, complaining of a stiff back that's been plaguing him for weeks. This calls for cupping, one of those medieval treatments that looks absolutely terrifying, but actually worked better than most people realize. The apprentice is already heating small glass cups over a flame, preparing them for the procedure. Cupping involves creating a vacuum inside these heated cups, then placing them on the patient's skin. The suction draws blood to the surface, supposedly relieving pain and improving circulation. Modern science might debate the effectiveness, but medieval patients swore by it. The merchant strips to the waist and lies face down on a wooden table that's seen more medical procedures than most modern emergency rooms. The heated cups go on with a soft popping sound as they create their seal against the skin. Within minutes, the merchant's back is covered in perfect circular marks where the cups have drawn blood to the surface. The barber surgeon works methodically, checking each cup to ensure proper suction without causing damage. Too much pressure could burst blood vessels. Too little wouldn't provide any relief. Finding that sweet spot required the kind of experience you only get from treating hundreds of aching backs. While the cups do their work, another patient arrives. A well-dressed merchant whose gout has been acting up again. Gout was the rich man's disease in medieval times, caused by too much good food and wine. The treatment? Bloodletting. The medieval cure. All that modern medicine loves to mock but actually had some scientific basis for certain conditions. The bloodletting setup looks like something from a horror movie. Sharp little blades called fleams, designed specifically for opening veins, lie arranged on a clean cloth. Small bronze bowls wait to catch the blood. The apprentice has prepared everything with the precision of a modern surgical assistant, because in medieval medicine, contamination meant death just as surely as it does today. The merchant rolls up his sleeve, exposing a forearm marbled with prominent veins. The barber surgeon selects his spot carefully. Too shallow, and you don't get enough blood flow. Too deep, and you risk hitting an artery. The fleam makes a quick, precise cut, and dark blood begins flowing into the waiting bowl. The merchant watches with the detached interest of someone who's been through this procedure many times before. But here's what really sets apart a good barber surgeon from a hack. He knows exactly how much blood to take. Medieval practitioners had developed surprisingly sophisticated methods for determining the right amount based on the patient's size, age, and condition. Too little bloodletting wouldn't provide relief. Too much could weaken or even kill the patient. The barber surgeon monitors the flow carefully, occasionally checking the merchant's pulse and color. Between patients, the apprentice stays busy with the endless maintenance that keeps a medical practice running. Tools need constant sharpening. Dull blades cause more pain and heal slower than sharp ones. Razors get stropped on leather until they can split hairs lengthwise. The fleams used for bloodletting require special attention because their edges need to be perfect for making clean cuts that heal properly. The boy also handles the less glamorous but equally important tasks. Bandages need folding into precise sizes for different types of wounds. Clay jars full of medicines require constant monitoring to make sure their contents haven't spoiled or been contaminated. The wooden work surfaces get scrubbed down with wine between patients. Medieval infection control that actually worked surprisingly well. The shop's business isn't just medical procedures and haircuts. Like most medieval businesses, it operates under the watchful eye of the guild system. A guild warden makes his rounds, checking that the barber surgeon's license board is properly displayed and that all the medicine jars bear the official seals that guarantee their contents. This isn't bureaucratic busywork. It's quality control that protects both practitioners and patients from dangerous quacks and contaminated medicines. The guild system also provides continuing education through informal networks. An older, more experienced surgeon stops by during the afternoon lull, ostensibly to chat, but actually to check on the younger practitioner's work. These informal consultations were how medical knowledge spread in the days before medical journals and conferences. The older surgeon examines some of the tools, nods approvingly at the apprentice's bandage folding technique, and shares news from other towns about new treatments and techniques. The conversation turns to the apprentice's training. Learning to be a barber surgeon wasn't just about memorizing procedures. It required developing steady hands, and the kind of calm confidence that keeps patients from panicking during painful treatments. The older surgeon watches the boy sharpen a fleam, offering gentle corrections to his technique. "Keep your hand steady," he advises. A shaky hand with a sharp blade helps nobody. The afternoon brings a steady stream of routine procedures mixed with the occasional emergency. A woman arrives with an infected cut on her arm, probably from kitchen work. The wound has the telltale red streaks that mean the infection is spreading. Left untreated, it could kill her within days. The barber surgeon cleans the wound thoroughly, drains the pus, and applies a poultice made from herbs that actually have antibacterial properties. A young man stumbles in with what's obviously a broken nose, probably courtesy of a tavern disagreement. Resetting a broken nose requires quick action before the swelling makes the job impossible. The barber surgeon works fast, manipulating the cartilage back into position with practiced efficiency. The patient's eyes water from the pain, but he'll be breathing normally again within a few days instead of dealing with a permanently crooked nose. As evening approaches, the pace finally begins to slow. The last few customers of the day get their routine haircuts and shaves, though even these simple procedures require the same attention to detail that characterize the day's surgical work. A dull razor pulls at whiskers instead of cutting them cleanly, leaving customers with irritated skin and a poor opinion of the establishment. The apprentice begins the end-of-day cleanup routine, but there's still one more task before they can close shop. A regular customer needs a special salve for an old wound that refuses to heal properly. The barber surgeon mixes the remedy himself: goose fat for the base, tree resin for its healing properties, and plantain, a common herb that actually does promote wound healing. The mixing process requires precise proportions and careful attention to temperature. Too hot, and the active ingredients in the herbs break down. Too cool, and the mixture won't blend properly. The finished salve goes into a small clay pot, sealed with wax to prevent contamination. The customer receives detailed instructions about how often to apply it and what to watch for as the wound heals. The final cleanup begins as shadows lengthen across the market square. The apprentice carefully wipes down every surface with wine-soaked cloths, removing the day's accumulation of blood, hair clippings, and medicinal residue. Each tool gets individual attention: razors oiled and wrapped in leather, forceps scrubbed until they gleam, fleams checked for nicks that could tear flesh instead of cutting cleanly. The wooden work table bears the scars of countless procedures, its surface marked with knife cuts and stained with substances that would make a modern health inspector faint. The most important evening ritual involves preparing for tomorrow's patients. Fresh water gets heated and poured into copper basins, ready for the morning's first shaves. Clean linen strips are counted and sorted by size, small ones for finger cuts, larger pieces for serious wounds, and the extra-wide bandages reserved for the kind of injuries that make grown men weep. The apprentice has learned through painful experience that running out of bandages during an emergency is like trying to fight a battle without weapons. Soap preparation requires its own careful attention. Medieval soap wasn't the gentle stuff we use today. It was made from animal fat and wood ash, creating a harsh but effective cleanser that could strip dirt and oils from both skin and surgical instruments. The barber surgeon mixes tomorrow's batch himself, because consistency matters when you're preparing someone's face for a razor that could easily remove more than just whiskers. The medicine cabinet gets restocked with practiced efficiency. Clay jars filled with powdered herbs occupy specific positions: willow bark for pain, yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for broken bones. Each jar bears the guild's official seal, guaranteeing that its contents meet the strict quality standards that separate legitimate practitioners from dangerous quacks. The apprentice checks expiration dates by smell and colour, because spoiled medicines kill patients just as surely as infected wounds. But the most fascinating part of closing time isn't the cleaning or restocking, it's the record keeping. The barber surgeon pulls out his shop book, a leather-bound ledger that serves as both business record and medical journal. Each day's patients get logged with simple marks that indicate the type of treatment provided. A small cross for tooth extractions, a circle for cupping, wavy lines for bloodletting. These aren't just business records, they're a medical database that tracks everything from seasonal illness patterns to which treatments work best for specific conditions. The financial side of the business gets recorded too. Medieval medicine operated on a complex payment system that would confuse modern insurance companies. Wealthy merchants paid in silver coins, craftsmen traded services, and poor farmers offered chickens or vegetables. The barber surgeon notes it all, because keeping track of who owes what prevents the kind of disputes that can destroy a medical practice's reputation. Some entries in the ledger tell stories that go beyond simple medical procedures. The carter with the crushed finger gets marked with a special symbol indicating he needs follow-up care in 3 days. The merchant who received cupping treatment has a note about his wife's pregnancy. She'll need the barber surgeon's services as a midwife within the month. The young man with the broken nose gets flagged as a potential troublemaker because tavern brawlers tend to be repeat customers. The apprentice watches this record-keeping process with the intense attention of someone learning a trade that could determine his future prosperity. Reading and writing weren't common skills in medieval times, but barber surgeons needed both to maintain their practices. The boy practices his letters on a wax tablet, copying medical terms and patient notes until his hand cramps. Steady hands might perform surgery, but educated hands build successful careers. As the last rays of sunlight fade from the shop windows, the evening's final ritual begins. The apprentice hangs the brass basin outside the door, positioning it so tomorrow's customers will know the shop is ready for business. He's scratched his initials into the handle. A small mark of pride in work well done. That basin represents more than just a barber's tool. It's a symbol of medical care available to anyone who needs it, regardless of social status or ability to pay full price. The walk home through lantern-lit streets gives master and apprentice time to discuss the day's lessons. The older man points out mistakes in technique, praises improvements in skill, and shares the kind of wisdom that only comes from years of treating everything from minor cuts to life-threatening emergencies. The apprentice listens with the intensity of someone whose future depends on absorbing every word. But the education doesn't stop when they reach home. The barber surgeon's house doubles as a medical library, filled with handwritten books containing centuries of accumulated knowledge. These aren't the elegant illuminated manuscripts found in monastery libraries. They're practical working manuals stained with use and marked with marginal notes from generations of practitioners. The apprentice spends his evenings copying recipes for medicines, studying anatomical drawings, and memorizing the symptoms of diseases he'll encounter throughout his career. The anatomical knowledge these practitioners possessed would surprise most people today. They couldn't perform the kind of internal surgery that modern medicine takes for granted, but they understood human anatomy better than many people realize. Years of treating wounds gave them detailed knowledge of muscle structure, blood vessel locations, and bone alignment. They knew which cuts would heal cleanly and which would leave permanent damage. Their understanding of infection and disease transmission was surprisingly sophisticated too. Medieval barber surgeons had figured out that certain conditions spread from person to person, even if they didn't understand the microscopic causes. They developed isolation procedures for serious illnesses, sterilization techniques using wine and heat, and wound care protocols that actually prevented many infections. The training process for becoming a barber surgeon typically lasted 7 years, longer than most modern medical specialties. Apprentices started young because the work required not just knowledge, but also the kind of steady nerves that develop through constant practice. By age 14, a good apprentice could assist with any procedure in the shop. By 21, he'd be ready to establish his own practice and take on apprentices of his own. The social status of barber surgeons occupied an interesting middle ground in medieval society. They weren't nobles or wealthy merchants, but they commanded respect from all social classes because everyone needed their services eventually. A barber surgeon who developed a reputation for skill and honesty could build a practice that supported his family comfortably and provided security that most medieval workers never enjoyed. Competition between practitioners was fierce, but regulated by the guild system. Stealing another surgeon's patients or spreading rumors about their competence could result in fines, loss of license, or expulsion from the guild entirely. But collaboration was equally important. Serious cases often required consultation between multiple practitioners, and sharing knowledge benefited everyone in the profession. The religious aspects of medieval medicine created interesting challenges for barber surgeons. The church taught that illness was often divine punishment for sin, but practical necessity demanded medical treatment regardless of theological implications. Most barber surgeons navigated this tension by incorporating prayers and religious symbols into their practice, while focusing primarily on proven medical techniques. Women played crucial but often hidden roles in the barber surgeon's world. While formal apprenticeships were typically reserved for boys, many surgeons' wives became skilled medical assistants. They prepared medicines, assisted with procedures, and often handled the female patients who preferred treatment from other women. Some developed reputations as healers in their own right, though their work rarely received official recognition. The economic impact of a good barber surgeon on his community extended far beyond individual patient care. Healthy workers were more productive, reducing the economic burden of illness on families and employers. Successful treatment of injuries meant fewer permanent disabilities that could impoverish entire households. The barber surgeon's shop often served as an unofficial community health center, providing not just treatment, but also health education and preventive care advice. Seasonal patterns strongly influenced the barber surgeon's practice. Summer brought more injuries from farming and construction work, but also better healing conditions and access to fresh medicinal herbs. Winter meant fewer traumatic injuries, but more respiratory illnesses and complications from poor nutrition. Spring often brought epidemics as people emerged from cramped winter quarters and began traveling again. The tools and techniques used by medieval barber surgeons evolved constantly through practical experience and knowledge sharing. New instrument designs spread through guild networks, successful treatment protocols were copied and adapted, and failed approaches were gradually abandoned. This informal research and development system produced genuine medical advances that laid the groundwork for modern surgical techniques. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the barber surgeon's world was how it combined the mundane and the miraculous in daily practice. One moment, trimming a merchant's beard, the next, saving a life through emergency surgery. The seamless transition between these roles required not just technical skill, but also the kind of calm confidence that patients needed to see in their healers. In a world where medical mistakes meant death, competence wasn't just professional pride, it was survival. The reputation of a barber surgeon spread through word of mouth faster than news of a royal decree. When someone walked away from that wooden table with their pain gone and their wound properly treated, they told their neighbors, their family, their drinking companions. But when someone died on that same table, the whispers traveled even faster. One botched tooth extraction or infected cut could destroy years of careful reputation building, turning a thriving practice into an empty shop with a rusty basin hanging outside. The pressure was incredible. Every morning brought new patients with problems that could go either way, simple procedures that might save a life, or routine treatments that could accidentally end one. The margin for error was thinner than the edge of a freshly sharpened razor. A barber surgeon's hands had to be steady not just because the work required precision, but because any sign of nervousness or uncertainty would send patients running to the next town's healer. Competition wasn't just about who could cut hair the straightest or pull teeth the fastest. It was about who could consistently deliver results that kept people alive and healthy. Some practitioners tried to stand out by specializing in particular types of injuries: bone setting, eye problems, or treating the mysterious ailments that seemed to strike whole families at once. Others built their reputation on being available at any hour, ready to stumble out of bed to treat emergencies that couldn't wait until morning. The most successful barber surgeons understood that medicine was as much about psychology as anatomy. A patient who believed in their healer's abilities often recovered faster than one who harbored doubts. This meant that everything from the cleanliness of the shop to the confidence in the practitioner's voice contributed to successful treatment. The theatrical aspects weren't just show, they were actually part of the healing process. But theatrics only worked if backed up by genuine skill. Patients might be impressed by elaborate ceremonies and mysterious potions, but they remembered results. The barber surgeon, who could set a broken arm so well that it healed straight and strong, earned customers for life. The one whose patients walked away with infections or permanent disabilities soon found himself treating only the most desperate cases, the people who had nowhere else to turn. The apprentice system created an interesting dynamic in these competitive medical markets. A master with a reputation for training exceptional apprentices attracted not just patients, but also the sons of wealthy families who wanted the best possible medical education. These premium apprentices often paid higher fees, providing additional income that allowed the master to invest in better tools and facilities. The cycle reinforced itself. Better resources attracted better apprentices, who became skilled practitioners, who enhanced the master's reputation. Some barber surgeons tried to protect their competitive advantages by keeping certain techniques secret, passing them only to their most trusted apprentices. Special recipes for healing salves, particular methods for setting difficult fractures, or innovative approaches to treating chronic conditions became closely guarded trade secrets. But the guild system worked against excessive secrecy. Practitioners who refused to share knowledge might find themselves excluded from the professional networks that provided referrals and consultation opportunities. The economics of medieval medicine created fascinating market dynamics. During plague years or major military conflicts, demand for medical services skyrocketed, while the supply of trained practitioners often decreased due to death and displacement. Surviving barber surgeons could charge premium prices and pick their patients carefully. But during peaceful, healthy periods, competition intensified as practitioners fought over a smaller pool of customers who needed their services. So the next time you walk into a modern barbershop and complain about waiting 10 minutes for a trim, remember our medieval barber surgeon working from dawn to dusk, seamlessly switching between shaving beards and saving lives. These weren't just haircutters who dabbled in medicine. They were the backbone of medieval healthcare, combining skilled craftsmanship with life-or-death medical procedures that would make today's emergency room doctors sweat. Their legacy lives on in every surgical technique, every sterile procedure, and every time someone trusts their life to a healer's steady hands. The red and white pole still spins outside barbershops today, a reminder that sometimes the most important history happens in the most ordinary places.